All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing another one of these instant reaction, rostermania reaction videos. You guys seem to love the last one, which I greatly appreciate. Make sure if you have not done so already to like this video as well as subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be trying to make as many as possible rostermania updates to give you guys these opinionated videos on the roster discussions that are going down, maybe a bit of insight possibly in the mix of it all. So yesterday was a big day, right? Yesterday was huge. We uploaded that video talking about the rumored OpTic Texas team. It feels like the rumors of DASHY and now ILLEY maybe being out of the OpTic Texas starting lineup have seemed to solidify a little bit more, whether it was tweets, whether it was sources coming forward, people kind of confirming or kind of going back and forth saying like, hey, I've heard the same thing. Bio changes, Twitter name changes, all of those things. It sounds like at the very minimum, and I mean at the bare minimum, a change is happening with OpTic Texas. Now, will it be just one move for DASHY? Could it be another move for ILLEY? Based off of what are the rumors right now, it does sound like, again, you have to be careful with the verbiage here, but it does sound like OpTic Texas are looking or at least intrigued by making two moves. And we learned yesterday, I think it was CDL Scrum Intel who was the first one to tweet it, that the rumored OpTic Texas starting lineup appears to be Shotzzy, Scump, as well as Arcitys and Pred. So it sounds like that is what OpTic Texas could be eyeing up. I heard, and a few other people were tweeting about this, talking about it. I think the Flank was even discussing it, how Celium was a name that has been brought up. Wild names. And to be honest with you, if you were to tell me that OpTic Texas is going to make a move after Major 1, and these are the three names, I would think that all three of these are untouchable. And the most interesting part about it, because there's been a lot of people who have been having this discussion, and I totally agree, these three players, how do you get LAG, Seattle, Atlanta, for example, to sign off on moves like this? And that's a whole other video, a whole other discussion. But I will say this, for those who think, this is just not even possible. It sounds like it, but if these are actually the targets that OpTic Texas is looking out for, I would imagine that they would be more well aware than anybody else the situations of Arcitys, of Pred, etc., etc. So that is what I will leave us with, because today we have to talk about something that I feel like nobody's really addressing at the moment. There was actually a bit of news earlier this morning, at least for me, that hit the timeline. There's another tweet coming in from CDL Scrum Intel, and this actually, I think, furthers the details, furthers the rumor, and maybe starts to slowly solidify what could be happening over with the OpTic Texas camp, as it does involve a different team. So as I said, this tweet comes in from CDL Scrum Intel. It says, the LA Guerrillas roster I'm hearing as of right now is set to be Assault, Diamond Con, Joe Deceives, and most likely Hook. He also goes on to say that things can rapidly change with this roster considering the Arcitys and OpTic situation. So that second paragraph, that second sentence is something to really keep an eye out for. It is just what he's hearing. Things definitely could change depending. However, the thing that I will mention is that this tweet is interesting for a number of different reasons. This ideology, this potential rebuild that the Guerrillas are looking to make is fascinating, and it absolutely involves OpTic Texas. So, like I said, the tweet goes on to mention that LAG Academy, 3/4 of that team is going to be joining the actual starting lineup, which sounds right. I mean, to be honest with you, LAG to me is the number one team that should probably be making a roster move, considering their performance, considering how good their academy team ended up looking over at Major 1. So as I said, it sounds like they're going to be bringing in Assault, Joe Deceives, and Diamond Con. That would be alongside of Hook. So what does that mean, right? That means that Spart and Neptune, those are two players who were not mentioned. They're most likely sent to the bench. And those three players, two of them are AR players, right? Diamond Con plays as a flex. Assault plays as a main AR. This tweet doesn't bring up Arcitys, right? It doesn't say, hey, LAG, this is the roster change they're looking to make. They're looking to bring in the academy team. The roster that we're hearing right now is that Arcitys is going to be playing alongside of these guys. No, it doesn't say that. So, and not only would it be difficult, I've also seen some people tweet or reply to this and be like, okay, well, who could be just a filler for right now. If they decide to get rid of Hook, then they can just slide in Arcitys. That would not work based off of roles. It would not work because, like I said, Arcitys plays the same role as Assault, has the same gun as Diamond Con. So if you want to slide in Arcitys, you're going to have to get rid of one of these Academy players that you were already, it sounds like, trying to bring in. So as I said, what does that mean for OpTic Texas? What does that mean for the rest of the CDL? So if LAG decide to make this massive roster change, and it does not mean that Arcitys is at least in the front of their mind, in their plans, it could mean that he is going elsewhere, right? It could mean for LAG, right? Hey, you know what? This roster is just clearly not working, right? This is not the team that we thought it would be. We want to have Arcitys here for a long time, but clearly maybe we should just wipe the board, start over, start fresh as soon as possible, because this is a team that's just not going to win. And that is true, right? So that's a big deal. It also means, like I said, that LAG, it doesn't sound like, if they're willing to bring in these many, Academy players, they're not necessarily getting anything in return. If Arcitys is headed to OpTic, we were talking so much yesterday about, okay, well, Dashy could be on LAG. Maybe they send ILLEY over to the Guerrillas. That could be a very likely move for them to make. So the fact that we're hearing this roster, we're not hearing Arcitys' name. We're also not hearing any OpTic players' names attached to LA Guerrillas. Leaves the question, okay, if Arcitys is headed to OpTic, LAG is making a rebuild, where is Dashy and where is ILLEY going to be headed, right? Because if they're not headed to LAG, that marks one team off the mini that I am sure are going to be speculating, or there's going to be a lot of rumors on where they could be headed. And that to me is where this kind of leads. I think it further solidifies this tweet, if it is true. This further solidifies that Arcitys very well could be headed to OpTic Texas, LAG, wiping the board, starting fresh, starting over. Maybe going to be, taking, I'm sure, a lot of the buyout that they're going to get from Arcitys' contract, translating that to something else. And if they're not getting any players in return, that opens up the floodgates to a crazier roster mania than I'm sure any of us would have expected. Like I said, where are they headed? We haven't heard anything really going on about Seattle Surge. The only things that we have heard is that, if they decide to make a move, there have been a few players attached to Pred as his replacement. It could be Wardy from the New York Subliners bench. It could be Johnny, somebody who played for Paris last season, currently in Challengers right now. Two guys that I think a lot of Seattle fans aren't stoked about, just given the history of Johnny not having a ton of success on Paris, despite looking pretty good. I'm a huge fan of Wardy, but in terms of trying to pick up from where Pred leaves off, again, you're not going to be stoked if you're a Seattle fan. So we haven't heard a ton about Seattle, but the things that we have, it doesn't sound like Dashy and ILLEY, that their names have been resulted over there. And as I said, those are two players that if you're OpTic, you do not have the rights to, right? You don't have Wardy, you don't have Johnny. And this leads to another situation, potentially, where OpTic is buying somebody out. Like, they could be buying out Arcitys, they could be buying out Pred, both, and having ILLEY and Dashy as pieces to send elsewhere. So, again, this is a big deal, because this is going to be a huge money deal that potentially ends up going down if there are no trades involved. Then that means that OpTic Texas are investing a lot to make sure that the rest of the season goes well, and not that the rest of the season goes well, but their future ends up going well also, right? We've talked about this lineup, what it could mean, the future talent that this roster would end up having is unbelievable, right? It is unbelievable. We know that Arcitys is on that 3-year deal. We know that Pred, I believe, is on a 1+1. His contract ends this season, so maybe there's a bit of leverage there for either side to say that, hey, Pred for sure is leaving Seattle. If you're Surge, you want to get at least something from his contract before he would end up expiring and you get nothing. At the same time, for OpTic Texas, we know for a fact that this is Scump's last season. There is leverage on the Seattle side to say, absolutely not, we're not going to allow Pred to walk. Same thing for Arcitys in that case too. So, as I said, getting back to the bigger picture, what does this mean for Dashy and ILLEY? Because it raises eyebrows across the rest of the league if we know for a fact nothing's going on with LAG, and it sounds like there's not a whole lot going on with Seattle. Big deal right there, right? There's a big deal going on in terms of where could they be headed, where's the trajectory, what teams are going to come calling, because I'm assuming ILLEY would be available. I know there's been a lot of talk about the injury. Maybe he could take over that sub spot, maybe even a coaching role as possible, maybe an S&D coach. I mean, there's been all kinds of discussions on what could be happening with ILLEY if, you know, the injury is still causing issues or whatever it may be. There's just not a lot of talk, really, it sounds like, about him. But it does feel like, at the bare minimum, in terms of players, that Dashy will be, if not already is, out there on the market. And you have to imagine that there are a lot of teams who are going to be interested in Bruce, right? I mean, the runner-up to MVP last season, there was no doubt the talent that he has. I've gone on the record many times to say that I think he has one of the best shots in COD history, if not the best shot of anybody that we have ever seen in COD esports history. So there were rumors. I mean, you know, whenever he was supposed to be dropped from OpTic Texas coming into this season, that Atlanta could have expressed interest, right? We know that they would later pick up Slasher. Is that maybe even on the cards, right? Could Dashy go over to Atlanta FaZe? I think from a stylistic standpoint, I don't know how well that would work, but if they could make it work, that would be unbelievable, right? He reunites with a lot of players that he's very familiar with in his early days, Simp and Celium to be specific. But to see Simp, Abizi, Celium, and Dashy, no doubt about it, most talented lineup in the CDL on paper, one of the most talented lineups we have ever seen in COD history. I think it's more of a dream right now that ends up taking place. But again, there's going to be a lot of teams that I'm sure are going to at least talk about the addition of Dashy, the addition of ILLEY. You know, would Toronto come calling? Would Minnesota come calling? Would the LA Thieves come calling? That is a team that I think is possible. I don't know. Would any of those rosters make a move for ILLEY or Dashy? Because if they're not going to be a part of LAG, if they're not going to be a part of Seattle, they have got to go somewhere. And like I said, based off of this tweet from LAG, which may not seem like a whole lot, to me, it says a ton. It says that if there is any weight to this whatsoever, it means that LAG are in full rebuild mode. They very well could be letting go of Arcitys, getting that money in return, that buyout in return of OpTic Texas. Nobody from OpTic Texas could be headed to the Guerrillas, and maybe nobody from OpTic Texas is headed to Seattle if they're able to pull off what I think would be one of the biggest deals that we've ever seen, is Pred to OpTic Texas in the middle of this season. But like I said, it feels like right now the Dashy move is a definite one. And who knows what could be going down. As I said, it's going to be a fun discussion, a fun conversation to have as the days progress. Who knows? Maybe we could get something further confirmed today. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of rumors, a lot of intel being expressed on the timeline, and you guys can feel free to check out the channel. I will be having updates as frequently as possible, giving you guys my speculation, my opinion too. Feeling a little under the weather, so I apologize for that, but it was a fun video to make. And I hope you guys stay tuned for more content here on the channel. The road to 7K is happening right now, but that's going to do it. Check you guys later. Thanks so much for checking out the channel, and we'll be back for some more rostermania reactions in a bit.